After the assembly of their ship was completed, the Kerbonauts were finally ready for the journey to Eve, but what problems would ensue on the way?
It was time for the Kerbals to set out on their epic journey. Beforehand though, we had to take care of some housekeeping. This is the ascent stage that we use to bring the final parts of the actual Eve mothership up into orbit, and as you can see it has a probe core attached, so we decided to deorbit it. Surprisingly though, it survived re-entry. Thankfully, it didn't survive a 200 meter per second crash with Kerbin, as you can see there. And so yes guys, welcome back to the KSP mission series of videos, where in this episode we are actually making our transfer to Eve. As I said in the last video, no actual Kerbonauts are going down onto the surface of Eve. We're saying that's because the hostile gravity, the 1.7 Gs of horrible terror and death, is probably too much for a Kerbal to endure, and so they're not going to risk it. Furthermore, the atmosphere pressure would crush the spacesuits. In reality, it's because I couldn't actually build a lander that could both land safely and take off with enough delta V in order to get into low Eve orbit. Thankfully though, one of my subscribers by the name of Jack Graham has given me some ideas, which means I probably will be coming back to do an actual manned landing on Eve in the future. However, at the moment, I haven't really got the time because I've got the KSP career mode series and all that sort of stuff, so we're just going to have to settle for this mission for now, but I will come back to it at some point. In his honour, I have named the Eve mothership the KSS Graham in his honour, and I thank him very much for his Eve landing suggestions because I will be trying some of those out in a future mission. Back to the mission at hand and the gameplay you're seeing in the background though. You can see that we're having some issues, shall we say, actually getting a transfer window to Eve. I was trying to get as close as possible to Eve, and I was even considering doing multiple encounters because I wanted to save as much fuel as possible with this thing. Yeah, it turns out I don't do a very good job of doing that. You'll see a bit later on that I actually remember that I could have used aerobraking at Eve, as I was using the Mark III parts, which of course are a lot more heat resistant when compared to other parts, shall we say. Unfortunately, like I said, I forgot about those, but we finally get an encounter with Eve, and I decide just to take it as it is. I tried to trim it just a little bit, I think, but aside from that, we're just going to take it as it is. I then remember, of course, that the KSS Graham only has two liquid-fueled LVN nuclear engines aboard it. Now, this is an issue because it means, although we only have liquid fuel on here now, with the exception of 880 units of oxidizer for the lander, the Gilly lander, should I say, this is still quite heavy, this mothership. With regards to like the Mark III parts and stuff, it's got lots of extra heating protection and stuff, and so as a result it is quite heavy, which means that two LVN engines don't really accelerate it all that much. You can see here the burn is just completely, it's huge. It's absolutely massive, and these burns do take one hell of a long time. So, while we're waiting for these burns to actually complete, I will talk you through some of the basics of this mission, and also probably why I sound a little bit nasal when nasally-ish, I don't know what the word is for that, but why I sound a little bit different when compared to what I usually do. That made no sense at all, but that's probably another reason why. I currently have hay fever. It's a really hot day in the UK at the moment. It's been a hot day for the past few days, and to be honest, I suffer from hay fever quite badly, and so if I sound nasally, I don't know what the word is, if I'm speaking through my nose, if it sounds like that, then I apologise. Sincerely, as I really can't help it. Yeah, but aside from that, we're going through a second orbit here, like I said, because we just simply don't have enough thrust and time in the orbit in order to actually escape Kerbin in one. So we're going to take advantage of the Oberth effect, where you're travelling fastest at periaps, in order to give us a little bit more kick when we're actually thrusting, to make those burns a little bit more efficient. As I said, fuel is key with this mission, and that's something that I'm really bad at conserving, and something that I'm aiming to improve on. But yeah, that's a concern that I had right from the get-go. You can see the amount of liquid fuel slowly draining down, because of course that amount includes the amount included on the lander, which will be needed for actual descent and ascent from Gilly. Admittedly, you won't need a lot for that, but you will still need some, which is admittedly a concern. And so if you look at the ship, when I eventually get out of map view here, if you look at the ship, you can see it's comprised of about three main modules. We have the main KSS Graham mothership in the middle. That's basically designed to be reusable for you guys returning, who perhaps haven't seen the first episode of the Mission to Eve. The middle part there is the KSS Graham. It is designed to be reusable, meaning that we can basically just strap any sort of landing module to the back of it. We can strap any sort of, I don't know, probe module or whatever to the front of it on the front docking port, and we basically just need to fill it up with fuel and away it goes. I may be making a couple of tweaks to it, however, because at the moment it's just not very efficient at all with regards to only the two nuclear engines. I really don't think, especially if I'm going to reach the outer Kerbal system, particularly with Joule, I really don't think that this thing is going to cut the mustard with regards to that. At the back, though, you can see our lander, our massively over-engineered Gilly lander. I also noticed while filming this video, or rather playing this back, that I have a probe core on there, which is attached to a docking port. This was to control the lander as it was unmanned. This was to control it as we were actually making the ascent to Kerbin. But you can see we're climbing out now to around the orbit of the moon, and if we don't accelerate on the next maneuver node, we will get an encounter with the moon, which would put us onto an inclined orbit, which would suck. So we have to execute this burn correctly. But like I say, this lander had a probe core just docked onto it. It was sort of like a medium to get it up there, as there were no crew actually in the capsule, because all the crew were already aboard the KSS Graham on the initial launch. Unfortunately, though, I forgot to actually get rid of it, which means I am carrying around some form of dead weight. I'm probably carrying around a lot of dead weight, though, because a lot of that lander probably isn't needed. With regards to Gilly's low gravity, it really is just an insane amount of low gravity. I mean, it's horrible that you could just jump into space, jump in the air with your Kerbal, and all of a sudden you could be in orbit around Gilly. That's how low the gravity is there, in case you haven't actually been. Our chances of getting there by the end of it, though, do look slim, and you'll see a bit later on what I mean by that. But you can see here we're actually leaving Kerbin behind now. We've got our burn, we've got our escape trajectory, we've passed the orbit of the moon, past Minmus, and we are now in deep space. The KSS Graham is now in deep space, and on the front of it, you're probably wondering what that is, as I try to trim my Eve encounter best as possible to bring us as close to the planet as I can. That thing on the front, that little cone, cone-shaped module, is a probe. This is a lander that will be going to the surface of Eve. Yes, you thought we wouldn't be visiting the surface. Yes, we will. It's just with a robot rather than a Kerbal. This is just a little lander with some parachutes attached that will actually go down and survey the surface of Eve. I've been meaning to do this for a while, actually. It's sort of a curiosity style descent. You can see we have the special fairing when we actually get out of map view again. A lot of this video was actually filmed in map view, which sucks, but hey, what can you do? Like I say, I was trying to do a curiosity style, so we have the fairing, the conical fairing around the base of it there, and then we also have the big heat shield on it, which will be needed because we will be slamming into Eve's atmosphere at a rate of knots when we actually hit there. And hopefully all the staging and stuff goes as planned, because it was sort of rushed together and then sort of thrown onto my mothership, onto the front of it, so that we could depart. You saw that in the last episode. So you can see here we've arrived within Eve's sphere of influence. I'm now plotting a descent burn, which will basically kill our orbital velocity and let us fall as close to the planet as possible. Like I say, I completely at this point forgot about aerobraking and the potential that it had. Unfortunately though, thinking about it, I don't think aerobraking would have been a good idea, because it would have ablated away the heat shield on the actual probe itself. Which means that perhaps it would have blown up during re-entry, but we can never be sure, and perhaps we'll never know now, because, well, we've already done the burn. You're watching it now. We already wasted a ton of fuel when perhaps we shouldn't have done, burning into an orbit around Eve. A very eccentric orbit, shall we say. And you can see the cockpit view. The crew have been cooped up in there for many Kerbal months. But unfortunately, I can't even read their names. I didn't even say their names in this one. Maybe I'll remember for the next video. But it's not the actual crew, actually Jebediah, Bill and Bob and Valentina for a change. No, this is a completely rookie crew. The reason being that Jeb, Bill and Bob and Valentina are taking some time off to grieve for their Kerbal friend who was lost on the surface of Minmus and valiantly tried to return using nothing but the RCS fuel in the rover and of course his EVA pack. Unfortunately, due to a moment with the Kraken, it was not to be, and I suggest you go watch that last mission, which was filmed back in March actually. It's rather strange that that was sort of like a March-April time sort of mission. I can't believe it was that long ago since I last actually did one. But here we go, you can see we're burning into an orbit around Eve. We're about to get captured. I did waste, like I say, some fuel actually circularizing where I perhaps shouldn't have done. I perhaps should have used aerobraking to actually circularize my orbit. But alas, that's what I ended up doing. And you can also see with our orbital plane, when we go back into the map view, you can see that our orbital plane is almost perpendicular to Gilly's, which isn't good at all. It means we're going to have to burn even more fuel when it comes to actually getting out to Gilly. This may be a mission abort a situation, because I really want to go to the surface of Gilly. I may have to use the funds that Space Y has given me for testing their parts. I may have to use some of that in shipping a fuel tanker out to Eve and actually getting some more fuel into the KSS Graham, because at the moment it doesn't look like we're going to make it home and to Gilly. This already means that the mission is going to be more extended than it initially was. It already has been extended because I couldn't get the transfer window right, and so I had to wait for several phases of Eve in order to actually get the right transfer orbit. But you can see here we've finished our burn. You can see those solar panels growing bright red with the heat caused from those two nuclear engines. They were going so fast, and you can see we whizzed by the planet because time warp sucks. I forgot about the Warp 2 feature there, and you can see I just missed out there. And I remember, of course, I can bring my periapsis down more efficiently if I thrust apoapsis rather than near periapsis. But that was a nice screenshot nonetheless. I don't know what I was doing here. This was a comical error. It's been a while, like I said, since I've actually been to an extra Kerbin body. I don't know if that's an extra, sort of like an extraterrestrial is an off-Earth body, but I don't know what I was saying there. You come here for these commentaries for rambling, don't you? Oh god, I go so off topic. But you can see here we're actually trying to bring our apoapsis down, trying to get as circular as possible, meaning that we have a more circular orbit. I honestly don't know what it means with regards to actually getting to Gilly at this point. Like I say, our orbit's almost perpendicular to Gilly's orbit. But we shall find out in the next episode if we can actually get there or not. Next episode we will actually be landing the probe on Eve, and we will also be setting off to Gilly and hopefully landing on Gilly in the next episode. That's if I can actually get our orbital inclination right with regards to actually going out to Gilly. You can see we're lowering our periapsis to make entry as easy as possible for the probe, because obviously it's only got RCS engines in order to actually function. But all of that will be in the next episode, guys. Will we be able to land on Gilly? Will we be able to land the probe successfully? Find all that out in the next episode. Until then, my name is Bradders, and I'm signing off. And as always, guys, peace out.